Good evening and welcome to the public meeting of the Halton District School Board for Wednesday, April the 4th, 2018. I'd like to welcome everyone and remind everyone that this meeting is video voice recorded and live streamed from the hdsb.ca website. I would also like to ask that you turn any devices to silent mode. This evening we have Trustee Mansour who has sent his regrets, and Trustee Papin, who is having technical difficulty, so she may be able to join the meeting when she can. Executive Officer McFadden is not here this evening. Okay, so this evening we're going to have Vice Chair Al Harrison honoring the land.
Thank you very much. Halton, as we know it today, is rich in history and modern traditions of many First Nations and the Métis. From the Anishinaabe to the Attawandaron to the Haudenosaunee and the Métis, these lands surrounding the Great Lakes are steeped in Indigenous history. As we gather today on these treaty lands, we have the responsibility to honor and respect the four directions: land, waters, plants, animals, ancestors that walked before us, and all the wonderful elements of creation that exist. We would like to acknowledge and thank the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation for sharing their traditional territory with us.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of possible conflict of interest? Seeing none, could I have a motion to approve the agenda? Trustee Gray, seconded by Trustee Graves. Is there any discussion? I'd like to recognize Director Miller.
Thank you, Chair Drevents. This evening, I presented this report last board meeting. On page 27 of your board package, there's a report on a new admin center. It was brought for action this evening. I am withdrawing that report from the board agenda for this evening. The report is around a new administrative center, and it focused on building a new center for our central staff on this site, and amalgamating all of our school admin services into one building onto this new site, which would have had implications for New Street and, of course, JWS. It's important to note that this is not a Halton issue. This is a provincial issue. Many boards around the province are struggling with old, antiquated administrative education centers, and they need to deal with that. In addition, there are very few tools available for boards to finance an education center or an administrative center. We cannot use proceeds of disposition and so on. We need to use surplus funds, and all boards have the same. Many boards are in the same circumstances, and the province recognizes this. However, this group of trustees last week brought out 2 weeks ago, had brought out some concerns primarily around the geography, the location of the admin center. It is not central, being here in West Burlington. We have more students in the east and in the north than we do in West Burlington, and I want the trustees and the public to know that we as staff heard what the trustees were saying, and we heard about their concerns. We have looked before, but perhaps there is more exploration and more investigation that we can do around a location for the administrative center. So for that reason, we're pulling the report today, and we'll likely bring a new report or revised report in February or January of 2020. I don't know why I keep saying 2019. Sorry, 2019, 2019. The reality is, and the public needs to know this, and the Board of Trustees, at some point a board has to make a decision. A non-decision is not an option. We are required to be AODA compliant by 2025. We're a public building, and all public buildings are required to be AODA compliant by 2025. Neither this building nor New Street is AODA compliant. So sometime in the next 1-2 years, a board is going to have to approve either a significant renovation to this center and New Street, or this center and not New Street, or a new administrative center. And it's going to be significant costs, whether it's a new center or whether it's renovations. And one might argue even a renovated old place may cost more money than a new center. And there's advantages with the new center. So certainly in deference to some of the concerns we've heard from the community and the Board of Trustees around the location, we're totally prepared to withdraw this report this evening and bring it back early in 2019. Thank you.
Trustee Daniele, you have a question?
Yes, I do. And comment and a question. One, I applaud your decision to do this. I think it's the absolute right decision to look further into it. And for me, it's a relatively short drive to West Burlington, but I know that for others, it is significantly not, especially anybody who does happen to be in the north. But the question that I do have is, by February 2019, you are aware that you could be dealing with a completely different Board of Trustees after the October 22nd election. And is that a concern of any kind, or is your timing pretty sharp on February 2019? I'm good with it if it is. I just wasn't sure if you were aware of that.
Through you, Chair Drabens, to Trustee Daniele, yes, I'm aware of it. There'll be a municipal election October 22nd. We may be dealing with an entire new board, some new members of the board, or this entire board. The February 2019, we're not totally wedded with that, but 2025 is AODA. It would take approximately, we estimate, somewhere between 3 to 5 years to get the necessary approvals and permits and land acquisition if it's a new land and all that. So February 2019 is not an exact date, but it can't differ very much from that. And as I said, even if it is a new board, a completely all new Board of Trustees, they will have to make a decision. As I said, a non-decision is not possible because we have to be AODA compliant, which will cost significant dollars. So
thank you for that. So it could actually, if you get the information, it could come back in the fall should the information be there. And either way, I want to say that I fully support your decision tonight whenever it does come back, because it is something that will need to be decided sooner than later, and it's better to have all the information. So thank you for pulling the report. I do appreciate it.
Trustee Amos.
Thank you. I just wanted to say I fully support the withdrawal of this report. I was actually going to bring a motion to delay the report until we've had an opportunity to just maybe to reach out to some other potential partners. So I believe that's what your intent was anyway. And so saying that, I fully support it. And to follow along on Trustee Daniele's thoughts, if something happens sooner than the February or January 2019, maybe it could come back sooner if you find a potential partner that might be of something, just as a suggestion.
Through you, Chair Drabens, to Trustee Amos, thank you for that. I do want people to know we have explored partnerships and other possible locations to no avail at this time, but we probably haven't exhausted it, and I think it's wise for us to go back and take another look at it and investigate further. And as I said, we're not wedded to the February 2019 date. I put that out there because I think that's what would give us sufficient time to do that. However, if something came along and there was a time urgency to it, I would certainly be prepared to bring a report back to the board in December or even November of 2018. I don't think anything would appear at the board in September or October, because I think that would put this particular Board of Trustees in a difficult position, given that there's an election October 22nd. But yeah, sure, it could move.
Just a reminder that the people on the list that we are talking about approving the agenda. So if there's anything that's not about that, Trustee Harvey-Hope.
Well, I was going to just mention that on what the other previous trustees were talking about, which was the pulling of the report, I also was going to ask for a deferral in that, but I also wanted to clarify that my comments at the last board meeting were not related to the distance between Oakville and Burlington, but due to the traffic volumes that we're finding going east, going west, going south, those kinds of things. So that would be my push for a geographically center location is due to the traffic, not due to the distance. It's actually not very far. It just is very far. It takes a long time to get here at 5 o'clock. But other than that, the agenda looks fine. Thank you.
Trustee Collard.
Thank you. My comment was that I would hope that when a report comes back, it will be much more detailed than the report that was in tonight's package, providing a lot more opportunity for the community to have understanding about the need for an admin center, as well as the funding for such an admin center, and perhaps an opportunity for their engagement in the process. Thank you.
Through you, Chair Gerbens, I would remind trustees that this has been an ongoing issue since 2005, and there have been some studies done. So it's been there for some 13, 14 years. So it is not a new issue, and the clock is ticking, so to speak.
Trustee Graves.
As the mover, I was wondering if, through you, Chair, if Trustee Gray would be comfortable with making the motion to approve as amended.
Yes, I would. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, seeing no one else on the speakers list, I'm going to set this up here. All in favor? Trustee Pappen may not be online, but that does carry. Thank you very much. Okay, now we are up to one of my favorite times, the Inspire Awards. So everyone in the Halton District School Board community can nominate or be nominated, families, neighbors, related organizations, staff, students, and school volunteers. The Inspire Award is given to an individual or a group that is formally or informally associated with the Halton District School Board who support our students and their achievements through exemplary caring initiative, innovation, and creativity. Award recipients choose where they would like to receive their award, and this evening we have 4 presentations. So just to let you know, Vice Chair Al Harrison and I will be tag teaming this a little bit because I have to do some presentations myself. So first I'd like to call up Trustee Daniele as an award presenter. And I would also like to call up Sarah Cronin, a teacher at Milton District High School. So Sarah is the department head of special education at Milton District High School. She demonstrates passion, commitment, and a long-standing dedication to ensuring students have equitable learning opportunities. Through workshops and various assistive technologies, Sarah enables students' self-discovery, perseverance, and autonomy. She helps students build confidence and develop life skills to help them succeed in high school and past graduation.
Can you know because it shows up on the screen? Thank you.
Sarah promotes equitable learning by engaging students, encouraging self-advocacy for learning differences, and by ensuring students can approach their learning in ways that make sense to them. Her ongoing support and advocacy for youth with special education needs inspires students and staff. Congratulations.
Family and friends, please feel free to come up and take some good pictures, okay? So I'd like to invite Chair Gerbentz to make the next two presentations, and I'd invite Jason Adams, a teacher at Ryerson Public School, to come up. Jason is a special education teacher to gifted students at Ryerson Public School. He's a support to students with learning differences and assists them with social skills, attention, and behavior. Jason is committed to understanding individual student needs and learning differences to provide equitable and enhanced learning opportunities for students. He takes the time to go above and beyond to make students feel comfortable and supported, and ensures parents are involved and updated with their children's learning. His dedication has helped students with learning differences begin to love school, and that's awesome. Thank you so much, and congratulations. Thanks so much. Okay, Chair Gerbentz. And I would like to invite Jessica Goodwin to come forward. And Jessica is a volunteer at Lester B. Pearson High School. And here's a little bit about what makes Jessica so awesome. She's a volunteer at Lester B. Pearson High School. She's put lots of significant time and effort into working with a special needs student and has demonstrated unwavering support and patience. She's been flexible and understanding and has gone above and beyond to support the student's success, both in and outside of school. Jessica's commitment and dedication has provided consistency to a student with learning challenges. Thank you so much, and congratulations.
I'd like to call up Trustee Graves to present the award. And I'd like to call up Rochelle McLeod, a teacher at Irma Colson. Okay, Rochelle is a teacher at Irma Coulson Public School. Her leadership of the breakfast program at the school enabled the program to run seamlessly for students and volunteers. Rochelle has put significant time and effort into ensuring all students at Irma Coulson have access to healthy food so they continue to learn, grow, and succeed. Students, staff, and volunteers are grateful for Rochelle's support. Congratulations. Now we're going to take a group picture.
Just want to say hi to Andrew Subino, who watches this every time you guys have a meeting, so I'm sure he's watching tonight. Hi, Andrew.
Okay, so we're going to continue on. We have no delegations and no presentations this evening, so we are up to the consent agenda items. Do any consent agenda items require discussion? They're pretty basic. Okay. So I'm just going to put the motion on the floor then. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve the consent agenda action items and receive the information items for April 4th, 2018. Moved by Trustee Amos, seconded by Trustee Oliver. Is there any discussion at this time? Seeing none? Okay. All in favor? That passes. We don't have Trustee Pappin's information coming in.
So let's do this. Okay, there. Now I can see it.
Okay.
Go to the other.
Oh, okay. Sorry. We are now up to ratification action items. Vice Chair Al Harrison, do you have any business from private session that requires approval?
No, I don't, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. We do have 3 action items, 2 now action items for this evening. The first is item 421, school year calendar report 18042 revised on page 17 of your board package. Welcome, Associate Director Bogue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to trustees, this report came to the board 2 weeks ago, as trustees are aware, and trustees had some questions about a couple of the dates in the report. And just as a quick recap, trustees are aware that we have a calendar committee that we consult with around dates for the school year calendar. That happened. We also try to align our calendar with the Halton Catholic Board as well around transportation efficiencies. So 2 dates that were of concern were the September PA Day date that was on September 21st, I believe, and the other one. And that was a concern around a community event. It was the Milton Fall Fair, which has an education day on that same date. And then the October PA date, which was October the 5th. And there was some questions around whether that could be moved to October 22nd. So trustees asked us to have a look at those dates and do some consultation with our coterminous board, which we did do. And this report reflects a change in the September date. We were able to work with our Catholic board counterparts to align that date on September the 17th. It's a Monday, but we actually had a Monday PA Day this year, which worked fine. And so that seemed to be a reasonable place to land. The October date we have left at the moment at October the 5th because there was not an indication that the Catholic Board could move that date at the time that we consulted with them. So at this point in time, we've got 1 date that we were able to adjust, and the October PA Day remains the same. So I'm happy to answer any questions that trustees may have.
Okay, before we do that, I'm going to put the motion on the floor. So be it resolved that the Halton District School Board approve the summary of statutory and board designated holidays and professional activity days for 2018-2019 as recommended through the consultation with the school year calendar committee and reflected in report 18042 revised. Moved by Trustee Amos, seconded by Trustee Daniele. I see there's a speaker list growing. So first on the list is Trustee Gray.
Thank you very much, and through the chair to Associate Director Bogue. I just wanted to comment that I was really happy to see that we were able to move that date to honor the Fall Fair in Milton. I just wanted to make a comment that I think every Friday in the month of September is a Fall Fair somewhere, and if we could make a future notation to maybe consider or at least gather this type of information, I think it would be just great for our community and supporting the agricultural fairs and special events that happen typically at that time of the year. So again, just wanted to say thank you so much. I'm very happy to see that change.
Sorry, Vice Chair Hal Harrison.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. So this dovetails, I think, with what Trustee Gray was saying, and that is just whether it's possible to develop some sort of mechanism like a standard templated letter or something, for example, that could be sent out to stakeholders such as the municipalities in the region and perhaps others in advance of the calendar committee meeting to just get any insights that they may have like this and then feed it into the calendar committee. So just kind of backing up some of this information in our process, whether something like that is possible and reasonable.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Vice Chair Al Harrison. I think that would be something that we certainly could do. We could post something on our website, for example, or look at. I would worry about sending something out to particular stakeholders for the fear that we would forget somebody, but perhaps to put something on the website or to tweet it out to say, it's calendar season now, we're planning for next year. If there are significant events or issues or suggestions that you have for us, maybe that might suit the same purpose.
Director Miller.
Through you, Chair Durbence, just for the public's purpose, I know trustees are fully aware of it. The PD days are professional learning days, and we do try to get them in as early in the school year as possible so that the students can benefit from the learning from the learning and education and the professional development that the teachers have. So there's always that fine balance between getting it in and being able to, and sorry, not just teachers, our educational assistants and our support staff as well, in getting the professional development in for them so that the students can benefit from it. So there's always that balance. So I know the trustees are aware of that, but sometimes the public may forget. So,
Trustee Harvey Hope.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to point out, I did go looking up September religious holidays. This doesn't conflict. I'm sure you did look it up, but you didn't mention that. So I just want to make sure that, yes, we all did that, because that was a concern a couple of years ago. Also, I would highly like to recommend, having sat on the school calendar committee for a few years, plus having been a parent trying to sort out timing, et cetera, especially for parents who are new to the system in September. The ministry does send out a draft of more than 1 year at a time now. They didn't used to. And also you can look at the calendar ahead and see which years are going to be problematic. I would highly recommend that we start working on, even though we don't have the official reason to get it approved, but we could start looking ahead to 1920 now. Because the idea being that, then you have an idea if there is going to be an issue, if you are going to have to widen the net, if there's going to be an election, if there's going to be all those other things. So if we could get into the habit of maybe doing one for sure and one in draft every time we do it, then that would always be a little bit ahead. A little bit longer term planning would be useful.
If I can respond to that, I think what Trustee Harvey Hope is referring to is the ministry does put out some information about the school year calendar in advance, 2 and 3 years in advance, but it's primarily around Christmas holiday and March break, and they establish those dates for us. We can change those, and that becomes a modified, what they call a modified school year calendar, and the approval process is a little bit different. I think the issue on the table today really is around the placement of the PA days. We have 7 of those, only 4 of which really we have much flexibility because 3 of them are locked down around some specific collective agreement issues within the board. So I appreciate the comment. I think planning ahead is for sure a good thing. If we have a modified calendar, it's good to get on that well in advance as well. So we will take those comments to heart.
Trustee Graves.
Thank you. I had the opportunity just very quickly today to review the Halton Catholic District School Board's piece of their board meeting where they discussed this issue. They received the same delegations that we did, and I wonder if anyone is planning to bring forward a motion to perhaps defer to have that discussion. Perhaps I'll turn it to you, Chair, and see if you've had any discussions or had.
I'm actually going to I'm going to pass the gavel because I would like to make a motion referring as a substitution, actually. So, do I?
Thank you for passing the gavel. I would okay, Trustee Graves is off. Would you like to be on the speakers list?
I'd like to make the motion, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so before I begin, I just want to say that I really like to thank the work of the calendar committee. It is a large committee. I've been on it, and they do great work. And part of what I would like to speak after I put my motion on as first speaker to go in a little more detail. But the recommendation is that be it resolved that the Halton District School Board conduct a one-time parent consultation to assess the support for the October Professional Activity Day on either Friday, October 5th, 2018, or Monday, October 22nd, 2018, with results communicated to trustees by Friday, April 13th.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Okay, seconded by Trustee Reynolds. Thank you very much. And now I'll look at the speakers list.
I get to speak to it first.
Yes. Chair Grabentz.
Okay, so as we all know, the Halton Catholic District School Board and the Halton District School Board attempt to align their school calendars to save on transportation costs. When the calendars don't align, it costs us $56,000 a year, and I understand on the Catholic board it's about $40,000 to $45,000. So we work, as I mentioned, with a multi-stakeholder committee to develop this calendar. And our original draft of the calendar had October 22nd as the PA day. And upon consultation with our coterminous board, they requested the day be moved to October 5th as they have a staff faith day that has been a more than 20-year tradition in their board. We understood that as a priority for them and changed our calendar to the 5th to match. So both boards, we had a delegation the last board meeting, and the Catholic board had a delegation last night from the municipal clerks. Requesting that the day be the municipal election date, which is October 22nd, for various reasons, and the public is welcome to go back and take a look at our discussion on that because it's video voice recorded. And many polling stations are set up in many of the Halton District School Board and Halton Catholic School Board schools. So, upon further discussion with the Halton Catholic District School Board, there was a willingness to adjust the date to October 22nd in light of this new information, should a consultation in both school boards support the change. Since the Halton District School Board's multi-stakeholder committee was open to both dates, the board is open to considering the request by the clerks. And so therefore, this motion has been crafted to be a substitution.
Thank you. And just before I move to the next speaker, Chair Grabentz, I just wanted to clarify, at the beginning you gave two monetary numbers, 56,000 and 45,000 or something in that range, and you said per year, but I just want to clarify that you mean per non-aligned PD day.
That's exactly what I mean, per non-aligned PD day.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Trustee Collard.
Thank you. I'm in support of the substitute motion. I'm always in favor of public consultation, and so I am very appreciative that this has been brought forward so that the public can have some input as to which date they prefer for their PD day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Trustee Amos.
I'm not in support of this motion for a couple of reasons. One of them is I believe that both boards would need to consult, not just our board, and they will not have this motion going to the board for another 2 weeks. This calendar has to be approved and to the ministry by May the 1st, and our next board meeting is April the 18th, and they will not even be able to approve consultation until the 17th. So that does not give enough turnaround. I don't believe even that 2-week period is enough time for consultation in our community, because I just don't believe it is. My other piece of it is, I personally think it's important that schools are open on election days, because I believe it is a learning tool. Even if they're not in the room where the voting is, it's part of the atmosphere of the school, and it causes a basis for discussion, and it makes students aware. And I also believe it also opens a slippery slope, because our schools are used for provincial and federal elections. So does that mean we have to hold PD days on those days as well? So I'm just concerned that this is starting something that could cause potential problems in the future.
Thank you very much. Chair Gerbents.
Just to let you know that last night, the Halton Catholic District School Board had a discussion on the calendar, and they've asked for a staff report and consultation. So they are going out to consultation as well, because they also have to meet the May 1st deadline as well, and they are interested in having understanding where we sit as well within our consultation.
Follow-up, Trustee Amos.
So is there going to be an alignment in the consultation? Because we can't have two different consultations happening at the same time, because I believe the same questions need to be asked of the whole community, as opposed to our board asking one set of questions and their board asking another set of questions, because questions can predetermine answers depending on how you ask them to.
Yep, Chair Gerbents.
So our staff will certainly speak with their staff to do whatever aligning is possible, if it passes.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Graves.
Thank you. I'm in favor of this. I'd like to see what the community thinks. Either way, I think that'll be useful information for this year and for future. Every 4 years. But I'm assuming in this that there will be then a final conversation with our coterminous board, and that, because I certainly would not want to make an independent decision based on our own data, but I'm assuming there'll be that conversation. We'll get feedback on what that conversation was before we make a final decision. Is that correct?
Yes, I'd like to actually defer to Associate Director Bogue for a second.
Through you, Madam Chair, to trustees. I have been in touch with one of the superintendents over at our coterminous board, and understand that they are going out to consultation as well. One of the challenges we're going to have is after their consultation, they're going to be bringing a recommendation on the Tuesday, just prior to our next Wednesday meeting. So we'll try to have some conversations ahead of time. Hopefully they'll be willing to share the results of their survey, and we can share with them as well. Ultimately, I think it's going to land at their board table for sure, but I think ahead of time, at least from a staff perspective, we'll be able to come to some consensus on whether we can reach alignment or not.
Thank you. Trustee Harvey Hope.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I'm in favor of the consultation, but I also am leery of what questions might be asked. And the issue here for the parents of students in Halton District School Board is the Friday PD day before Thanksgiving, or PD day on the municipal election day. And then there's the unaligned costs us money, and the municipalities have requested it, but staff and the original calendar committee thought it would be fine. So 3 or 4 lines like that, and then which date do you prefer? Because if you just ask, gee, do you want the Friday before Thanksgiving off or not? you will get a skewed response. So I'm just saying is I think you need a little bit of a paragraph just to so that people understand what the choice is for.
If I can respond to that, I agree, Superintendent Harvey Hope. We would need to give them a little bit of context. We would mention the election on October 22nd as one of the pieces, and we would try to frame the question that way. We can only control what we do, unfortunately. We can have conversations with the coterminous board around what their survey approach will look like, but we only have control about what we can do. But the way you frame that, I think, makes perfect sense.
Thank you very much. Trustee Amos.
We were asking for consultation, but are we actually surveying? I guess there's a difference between the two. And so if we are surveying, I would like some alignment with the type of questions asked, which I've already said. But I also believe that it's important that we survey the same type of groups. So if they've approved certain set of groups, that we should look at that same set of groups.
Thank you. Anybody? Okay.
Maybe I can start a response, and I would just reiterate, or maybe I can start by saying our intention, we have had some conversation, our intention would be a very brief survey that we could send out via an email blast. So we'd fire it out. There'd be a very short turnaround according to the timeline to get a response back. In a perfect world, we would try to align the question pieces, but again, we can only commit on what we are able to do, and our sort of commitment, I think what I'm hearing was around community and parents. I think that's sort of what I had heard last time, that maybe we might want to reach out to do that. I'm not 100% sure where our coterminous board will, where their survey will travel to.
Thank you very much. Okay, so seeing no more speakers on the list, I'm going to trustees need me to reread the question? Are you okay? Okay. So, excellent. Here we go. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board conduct a one-time parent consultation to assess the support for the October Professional Activity Day on either Friday, October 5th, 2018, or Monday, October 22nd, 2018, with results communicated to trustees by Friday, April 13th, 2018. So I'm going to call the question here. Yes, ma'am.
Just want to be clear, that means we're not deciding the school year calendar tonight. We're not deciding on the September date tonight. We will be deciding that after the consultation.
Yes, that's my understanding, that the entire calendar then will be voted on following the consultation, so that. Yes. Okay, so the entire school year calendar will be voted on at our second April meeting. The consultation is only focused on the October 5th versus 22nd dates. Okay, so for your voting, please. Okay, that looks like it passes. Yes. For people who want to check out the voting, I would just direct you to the screen, and that passes. Thank you, and I will pass the gavel back.
Okay, so our next item is number 422, Educational Development Charge Policies on Application of Operating Surpluses and Alternative Accommodation Arrangements. Report 18055. Welcome, Superintendent Veerman. This is on page 23 of your board package.
Thank you. Through the chair, the report was presented at the last board meeting, and at this time I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Okay, I'm going to put the motion on the floor. Be it resolved that the Halton District School Board hereby approves the statement that there is no operating surplus available in the budget that can be applied to reduce growth-related net education land costs, and that the board approves the statement that there have been no opportunities to implement alternative accommodation arrangements. Moved by Trustee Amos, seconded by Trustee Gray. And I see there's already someone on the speaker's list. Trustee Collard.
Thank you. I don't remember ever seeing a motion like this before, and I was wondering if you could explain a little bit of why this motion's being brought this year when we haven't had this motion in prior years.
Through the chair, every time that we are in the process of implementing a new bylaw, not an amendment, a bylaw, we are required under the Education Act to present these policies, and it was also presented back in 2014.
Okay, Vice Chair Al Harrison.
Thank you very much. Through you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to clarify that this process dovetails with or incorporates the feedback through the Community Planning Partnerships Program, and that the board is interested in partnership opportunities should they arise. This is just saying that none have arisen at this point in time that would offset. Is that correct?
Through the vice chair, or through the chair to the vice chair, that is correct. On an annual basis, General Manager Renzella does meet with community partners or potential community partners, determine if there is interest in various locations in our schools, and that information is presented to the trustees on an annual basis.
Trustee Harvey Hope.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. So if I remember correctly, both of these policy statements are now under review to get them into the right formats. So I note that the alternative accommodation arrangements talks about long-term facilities that are necessary to accommodate long-term enrollment. So they're talking about we need land because we're going to have a long-term overflow, not just, gee, we've got some portables, right? So that's basically saying the reason why we have the CDC is, yes, we need more accommodation, and we can accommodate it in what we would consider short-term, which is portables. The question I have is the interesting piece, to ensure that its identity, ambience, and integrity are preserved. Whoever is looking at revising this policy, perhaps we could somebody could elaborate on that when we get to that point. But it also talks about if we're looking at a partnership, that we need to be able to control the building. And so that's where you get into leasing isn't always useful, and because of where it is and the environment. And again, the requirement that we need to buy and have control over our own facilities. Because I noticed that it said separate entrance with school name on the exterior, and I recall that the Milton Learning Center, when it's been Milton number X for a few times while we're waiting, follows that rule. It has a sign on the outside that says this is Milton number, well, we usually call it Milton Public School. So just to note that we have been following this, what seems to be an otherwise outdated policy. We are following it, and we just need to clean it up a little. Thanks.
Thank you. And seeing no one else on the speakers list, all those in favor? Thank you. That passes unanimously. Okay, just for those that may have joined us a little late, the next item 423 was withdrawn. Next is the communications to the board, and we start off with our student trustee reports.
Thank you. Firstly, Student Trustee Mansour sends his regrets. In terms of our update, our next Student Senate meeting will be next Tuesday. We've also set our date for the Halton Youth Leadership Symposium is Thursday, May 31st, and we'd love to have trustees come out. I know there were a number of you who came out last year, and it's always great for the elementary students to see the trustees from their schools and to see the trustees for their high schools that they'll be going to. We'll also be having a candidates meeting for the student trustee election candidates on the Senate Day, so right before the elementary portion of Student Senate starts. It's on April 10th. And we've already received a number of candidate forms for the student trustee election and are looking forward to receiving even more. The deadline for them to submit is the day before the candidates meeting, so April 9th. And Muktasid and I would like to encourage all trustees to share the information with their schools or to any interested students. And after the last board meeting, I forwarded to all of you the letter that we had sent out to the schools and have been sent out to the administrators, explaining all of the details as to how students should apply in the form and all of that information. The final thing I wanted to report on is an event that happened at White Oaks. On March 26th, we hosted an event about accessibility with an organization called the Teachable Project, which works with the Accessibility Directorate of Ontario, and it essentially creates lesson plans about accessibility for teachers to integrate in the classroom. The event was a panel discussion with myself and 2 other White Oak students, as well as Trustee Amos, and we discussed accessibility challenges for youth in terms of within school and in finding employment, and how schools, the board, and the province can create a more accessible future. The minister responsible for accessibility, Tracy McCharles, was at the event, and she delivered the opening remarks, and she participated in the panel. And we also had the closing remarks delivered by Superintendent Ruddock, which was awesome. And I just wanted to thank Trustee Amos and Superintendent Ruddock for participating in the event. I know a lot of students came up to me afterwards and said that they not only enjoyed hearing the discussions and all the remarks and seeing a minister and seeing the trustees and the superintendent, but they learned a lot as well and found it really cool to see that the different levels of government were present at White Oaks, and that they got to be a part of a very cool event. So that's our update for this week. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Trustee Metropolitansky? Oh, I see. Trustee Amos.
Thank you. And Trustee Metropolitansky is being very modest because she is a very good advocate and well-spoken, as we all know, but her knowledge of accessibility, if you ever have a conversation with her, it's very enlightening because they were talking about non-visible accessibility as well as visible accessibility. And I loved her example when she started talking about how glasses and contacts are actually something that we at one time would have had for accessibility, because if you couldn't see, you couldn't do certain things. And now society has adapted so that glasses and contacts are the norm and are taken into account. And Trustee Metropolitansky says it much better than I did, but I just was blown away because I'd never thought of it like that. And so how society needs to grow to incorporate a lot of the accommodations needed for these, for people who need accessibility. And the other piece of it is one of the things that I shared with students that I think we were surprised about is that all teachers already incorporate differentiated learning, and that is an accommodation to all learning styles, and so that we are able to now teach to so many more students than we used to. So there were many pieces of it, and it is on a video, and we will share it because it is a very good video, and it was just a great day, and thank you for organizing that.
Thank you very much. So now we are up to our action items for the April 18th board meeting. First up is number 521, Operational Plan 2018-2019, Report 18067, which this is for approval in June 2018 and is on page 35 of your board package. Welcome back, Associate Director Bogue.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and through you to trustees. This is our operational plan report for next year. The report lists the strategies and actions that we are intending to take next year. All of the senior team has contributed to this report, and each of them has reviewed their particular areas of our multi-year plan or of our one-year snapshot, which is our operational plan, and have assessed the strategies that were currently in place and made changes where appropriate. So you'll see that some strategies may be discontinued because either we met our outcome, it might have been something that was to get it done or not, and it may be complete, so it may fall off, or it may be viewed as a less than successful strategy, and so you might see some different strategies listed there. I just want to emphasize for trustees and for the public that this plan is not everything that we do. It is really connected very specifically to the multi-year plan. I mean, everything that we do really should be connected to our multi-year plan. And this is highlights. These are pieces that we want to focus on, pieces that are very measurable, that we can monitor and support growth in a variety of areas, but it's not everything, not meant to be everything. So on the report, it may look a little messy because there's some parts that are in bold. Those are new pieces, and there are parts that are struck through. We wanted trustees to be aware of things that we are discontinuing. And when this comes back for the final approval in June, we will have cleaned that up. So I'm happy to answer any questions or direct them to superintendents to provide responses. And we're happy to receive any feedback from trustees, and we can certainly take that away before it comes back in June.
Thank you. We have a few people on the speakers list. First up is Trustee Harvey Hope.
Thank you. Just a comment through you, Madam Chair, to the Associate Director Bogue. I appreciate the bold and the strike-throughs because it does allow you to do a once through just to see if there's anything that in the strike-through that you're like, don't see somewhere else in the bold, which just to note is sometimes happens when you go, oh, they're not really stopping that. Oh no, they've changed the word above in the sentence above and they've included it there. So just to keep in mind, you got to read the two parts together. But thank you for that. And I do realize that the final version needs to be cleaned up. It's nice to see the first draft in this format. Thank you.
Trustee Gray.
Thank you very much, through the chair, to Associate Director Bogue. Under the system goals, the very first goal talks about 100% of stakeholders will have the opportunity to provide feedback to the HDSB using a new community engagement process tool. I see one of the things highlighted in bold under that key strategy is to have parent-guardian surveys in top 5 languages spoken and so on and so forth. Tonight, we've talked about a community consultation, a survey going out. Is this something that can be enacted in time for that particular survey, which is to be, I guess, created and released and returned within almost less than 2 weeks?
Thank you for that question, Trustee Gray. We certainly did manage to put this together for Have Your Say, which was something that we had lots of lead time on. We can take that back to have a look at it. It might honestly be quite tight. We have to actually farm this work out to an outside firm who does the translation services for us. And then, of course, they then translate the results back. I'm not sure we're going to be able to do this in a turnaround because I think we have to get this out tomorrow, probably. I'm looking at Superintendent Blackwell from our research department, which would make this an impossible challenge.
Thank you.
Trustee Collard.
Thank you. First, just an observation that some of the goals have, or key strategies rather, have use of acronyms that the public may not understand. And I was wondering if we could have the acronyms expanded so that when the public reads this, they know what we're planning on doing. And the other thing that I just wanted to ask was if we might more intentionally and purposefully discuss the equity lenses in these strategies. They seem to be embedded in a lot of areas without being specifically pointed to. And it has been mentioned to me by members of the community that they would like to see more intentional phrasing used regarding the equity lenses.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Trustee Collard, certainly the acronyms. I know we sometimes that becomes another language, so that's a really fair comment, and we will go through the document and make sure those acronyms are spelled out. I'm just wondering whether you can provide an example or a little bit more specificity around the equity lenses. I know in operational plans from a previous multi-year plan, we did have some of that specified because it was a bit of a major focus of the day. We've sort of moved, I think, beyond that to trying to deal with equity as a very inclusive kind of practice, and for us to start to tease out each of those individual lenses almost takes us back several years. So I'm just wondering, maybe you could provide an example, and maybe Superintendent Eatock might be able to provide a perspective as well.
I'm thinking that rather than in the plan itself, but in the report, just to make an intentional mention of the equity lenses being embedded in the plan.
Absolutely, we can do that, yes.
Superintendent Eatock?
Did you want me to expand on that? Yeah, the equity lenses served a very useful purpose at one time and still do to a certain extent in terms of their initial purpose was to really create awareness for the system that equity involves a variety of different areas or lenses. And so as Associate Director Bogue mentioned, we're really trying to push our system beyond that. The public may not be ready for that piece yet, but as a system and our staff for sure, we're very much moving on to developing critical consciousness where we're very aware of the intersectionality of all the different lenses, and looking at and issues from more of a global way. So that doesn't mean that we've abandoned the lenses. It's just we're moving on beyond them at this point. So I'm not sure that explanation helps for why it's not specifically outlined in this report.
Thank you. It is helpful. I just wanted to make sure that it was mentioned somewhere in the report because there is a sensitivity in the community around the equity lenses and wanting to see them. So thank you.
Vice Chair Al Harrison.
Thank you very much. Through you, Madam Chair. My comment and question is related to page 40 of the agenda package. Schools will receive instruction on safe use of technology and digital citizenship. I just wanted to express gratitude that is continuing on from last year. I think that's great. And safe use of technology means a couple of different things to me. One is teaching and learning how to use our devices safely in the way that they're intended by manufacturers and within safe parameters. The other piece of safety is around using applications and software for educational purposes, and that whole host of other stuff that's out there that students use, some of which is safer than others. I remember a few years ago, Ask FM was a big one. The anonymity, there's geolocating apps now that can be predatory. So I just wonder about that second piece. And often, for me, I'm learning about these things after it's too late, after there's been an issue. So my question is whether schools are also receiving instruction or sharing information and intel around that second piece.
Sure. Thank you, through the chair, to all the trustees. Absolutely. And, we're excited about our Technology and You resource that we launched in the fall, and it's a living document, and working through communications to help, we work with our teachers, but we also work with our parents as well, and we do a tech tip every month, which we do some Twitter ads, we post on our Facebook page, because we do realize that there's more to technology that just happens in the classroom, and it's that continuously to develop the good technology decisions that our kids are making. Just today this week, we're spending time with more than 100 teachers in our system, and we continuously talk about good digital citizenship and decisions that kids are making. One thing that I know is coming to our schools next year for our staff is a catalog of software. We're in the midst of cataloging software right now, software that has been vetted either by the board, the ministry, where we have agreements, and the software has been vetted. And so teachers will have a catalog of software. So we're absolutely conscious of our students and staff making good decisions for applications that we're using in our classroom. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Trustee Harvey Hope.
Thank you. Just to follow up on, I believe it was Trustee Collard who was talking about the languages. I know we're doing communication in the top 5 languages other than English. And I would just suggest that since we have a strong contingent of French-speaking parents in this board, they're not going to be in the top 5. But it would also be useful for the French immersion and the French core to some extent to have at least some of the surveys, etc., in French. And it would also be able to be used as a curriculum document, as in the teacher could be talking about, by the way, make sure you have your parents fill this out, or to have some of those other ones where they could then not switch to English to describe to the students what it is that they're asking them to fill out, et cetera. So just to keep that in mind, and I know it's the top 5 plus English, but maybe it could be top 5 plus English and French. And I realize that most parents whose first language is French can function in English. But I have noticed in the last 15 years, more parents actually speaking French out in the community with their students in the hallways, with a teacher or a principal if they can. So the level of French use is higher than it used to be.
Thanks for that question, Trustee Harvey Hope. We, in fact, got some feedback after doing the Have Your Say survey, and I think trustees will be happy to know we did get a really nice response from a number of families around those translated versions, but we did get some feedback that we should be including French. So as we debrief this year's survey and the responses and we look at our top languages, French is already on our radar, that we probably need to include that as well, one more, and there may be some others as well.
Okay, no more speakers on the speakers list. So we are going to move on to our information items. I hope you're comfortable, Associate Director Bogue, because you're up for the next few reports. So the first information item is number 531, rental rates 2017-2018. Report 18061 on page 42 of your board package.
Thank you, Chair Krabetz. Each year, I think trustees receive this report. We do review our rental rates and we make adjustments where appropriate. The board receives a grant each year from the ministry to subsidize rented space in our schools. And this grant allows us to reduce our rate beyond what we would consider a cost recovery rate. This year, we've been reducing our rates with in our reciprocal agreement with our municipalities by 28%, and we will be doing the same next year at a rate of 28%. I'm happy to answer any questions that I can, and we'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay. There's a speakers list coming now. So, Trustee Reynolds.
Thank you, through the chair. I'm just wondering, in the process, do we ever reflect on what the rates are of our coterminous board, and just wondering how we compare in terms of our attractiveness to the community to rent our space?
Thank you for that question. Through you, Madam Chair, to Trustee Reynolds and all trustees. We do look at that. In fact, these rates are posted on both websites, the public board and our coterminous board as well. Some of our rates are identical for certain groups because it's not just one rate fits all. But where we differ is around our municipal reciprocal agreement rates, and they're a little bit different. Our rates are a little bit more. I would say they're still competitive, but they are a little bit more. Our other rates for sort of, out of Halton or commercial use, those kinds of things are very much aligned with the Catholic Board.
Trustee Gray.
Thank you very much, through the chair, to Associate Director Bogue. We know that our Ministry of Education is very passionate about supporting healthy, active lifestyles for our youth. And I have always yearly a concern that we need to make these rental agreements and rental opportunities affordable. And I wonder if, given that we once were able to provide a reduction in rates as high as 42% a number of years ago, and now we're down to 28%, and we're holding, it sounds like, for next year. I wonder, has there ever been any input given by boards of education to the Ministry of Education around this ministry grant and increasing this grant so that we can, in fact, provide even more affordable rental rates for our community members?
That's a great question, Trustee Gray. And in my 3.5 months in the facilities department, I'm not aware whether we've provided that feedback. We know, there's never enough, and we'd like to certainly have more economical rates to encourage exactly what you're talking about. I don't know if we've provided that kind of feedback or not to the ministry.
Through you, Chair Drabens, to Trustee Gray, I don't know if we have specifically done that as a board, and I don't know if other boards have done that. I do know that I have heard from at some of the meetings that I've been at with directors and so on, that it is being discussed, rental rates, and talking to the ministry about but there's so it's a topic of conversation. Whether there's been a formal appeal to it during the budgeting process, I can't say, but it's certainly something we can look into and see if there has been, and if not, we could consider doing it. So.
Follow-up? I would certainly support that, some activity or some direction or some action taken so that we can, I guess, protect the further erosion of this percentage through the ministry grant. I think we know that we live in a time where expenses increase, but the ministry grant isn't keeping pace. And I just would hate to think that we're, in fact, having a negative impact on the participation rates of our youth because families can't afford the rental rates or the memberships that are based around rental rates of our facilities in Halton.
Trustee Harvey-Hope.
Thank you. Through you to the speaker. So I'm looking at this chart, and the report talks about operational costs are calculated and rental volumes are estimated. So perhaps could elaborate on how they come up with the base rate, because I don't want somebody paying for a part of the capital cost of having put the building there, because whether the gym stays empty or not at night, it's our cost. And so I'm not sure it's clear enough that what we're actually trying to recover is keeping the heat up at 21 degrees instead of putting it down to 14, and the caretaker having to wait till after they leave at 10 o'clock to clean, those kinds of things. And whether, because I'm not sure that we've made it clear enough. That was my first question. My second one is I'm not exactly sure how you know which column you're in. For instance, the Scouts rent through the town, so I think that means they use the municipal reciprocal agreement rather than they don't rent directly from the board. So I'm not sure how you tell which column you're in, because I was just trying to look at the differences in the rates, because I happen to have access to a rental agreement for the Scouts. And it looks like the amounts went up, and yet you said the rates were the same, the percentage was the same. So I was just trying to figure out how to tell what your next rate will be.
Thank you for that question. Maybe I can talk a little bit about the cost recovery piece first. And it's unfortunate that Superintendent Bierman is not in the room. There is a rather complex method of looking at all aspects that would go into the rental of a space. So it would include some piece of utilities. It would include some piece of the cleanup after. It would include wear and tear. How many uses before that facility needs to be waxed, maintained, repainted, all those pieces. I think our methodology there is very much in line with the Catholic Board, in fact, on how they calculate that as well. So that's the starting point. And that, I'm sorry, I haven't got a lot more detail than that, but it is a rather complex piece that looks at life cycle of things and all of that combined. In terms of where does one sit, we have two rental coordinators that really look at each application individually. And I'll be very honest with you, there are a number of them that sometimes straddle one or more categories. And so there has to be some discussion. Often there's some questions that go back to the applicant to get a little bit more information so that they can determine, is this a Halton registered not-for-profit organization, for example? Is it the municipality? Is it some combination? And there is some discussion that goes on when those applications are received.
So, but I believe there's a difference between if you rent from the town or the municipality on using their municipal agreement versus coming direct to our rental coordinator, right? So I think that's also, you have to remember where you're being, because a lot of the youth-oriented groups are part of, in Oakville, the CORE program, which gives them a discounted rate for using town facilities, which includes our facilities under the municipal reciprocal agreement. It's just that it's an interesting, I've seen it from both sides now and had people complain, well, like, how come the rates keep going up? And we keep saying, well, part of it is because we used to get a 48% grant and now it's 28%. And also because utilities have gone up 2 or 3% every year and the percentage hasn't changed. So I just wanted to make sure people realize it's clear. We have an elaborate formula for figuring this out. We're trying to only cover the costs that we otherwise don't get a grant for, and the grant isn't keeping up. So, but that it does sometimes depend on who you've actually rented with. So.
Thank you, right on time. Okay, so there's nobody else on the speakers list. The next three reports are based on sketch plans, and Director Miller wanted to speak.
Thank you, Chair Drabens. Just a wee bit of background on this. On December, the next three plans coming up are Northeast Oakville Elementary Sketch Plan, Nelson Sketch Plan for the renovation, and M.M. Robinson Sketch Plan. And the operative word here is sketch plan. And at some point, Superintendent Blackwell will talk about the process for both Nelson and M.M. I'm lumping them together, and you'll see the reason why I'm doing that in a second. On December 31st, 2017, our longtime, around 30 years or so, Superintendent Jerry Cullen retired. And since that time, Associate Director Bogue and the great staff of the Facilities Department have assumed many of the responsibilities that Jerry had undertaken and was responsible for the many years, and the great service he provided to this board and to its students by buildings and renovations and maintenance and all those other things. We are in a very competitive environment for a replacement for Jerry Cullen. And many boards were looking for superintendent's facilities at the same time as we were. And I'm very pleased to announce tonight that we have been very successful in getting our number one candidate, Maya Puccetti. I like the way I say that. Maya comes to us from Toronto Catholic District School Board. She is currently in the acting role of Associate Director and Superintendent of Facilities. Maya has a bachelor's degree in History and Environmental Design and a master's degree in Architecture. Some of the roles she has had the role of Senior Coordinator of Renewal and Energy at Toronto Catholic, Senior Manager of Renewal at Toronto Catholic. Prior to that, she was a capital planner for Toronto Community Housing and an architect with McClellan, Junkons, Miller. She is fully bilingual, and she comes with a wealth of experience, and we're very, very much looking forward to Maya coming to our board to be our superintendent of facilities. But of course, as you can imagine, there are some complications. I think we have a professional responsibility to the Toronto Catholic District School Board that they will have some replacements, and there's some contractual obligations and so on. So the start date for Maya has not yet been determined. It will be shortly, and then we will announce when the start date when Maya will come to the board. And I asked that if any of the Halton media is watching tonight to just delay contacting Maya and be cognizant of the fact that she's still employed with the Toronto Catholic District School Board, and the professional she is has obligations to that board and her duties to that board to fulfill the requirements of that job. So we're very much looking forward to Maya and introducing Maya to all the Board of Trustees and our staff. And once we have a date, we will let the public know and the Board of Trustees know the date. And so the reason I've said this now, it's kind of odd that we've done it in this way. We would normally have a separate report, is because we have been, Associate Director Bogue's done a magnificent job as superintendent of facilities, but we have been out without a bona fide superintendent of facilities for some 3.5 months. And I think it's important that the community know, our staff know, that we have a superintendent of facilities just waiting in the wings. And as soon as we can sort out her obligations to Toronto Catholic and our contractual obligations to ourselves, we'll do so. They'll be done, and we'll be going on. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Miller. Okay, so we're going to go on to number 532, Northeast Oakville number 2 sketch plans, report 18062 on page 44 of your board package. Thank you, Associate Director Bogue.
And thank you again, Madam Chair. These sketch plans, we're happy to share these with you for Northeast Oakville number 2. The school our intent is to open the school in September 2019. This sketch plan, if folks may see that it looks somewhat familiar, is a repeat of Milton 10. With a little bit of a variation around the childcare portion of the project. We've right-sized the childcare, but the school piece is the same, pretty much a repeat. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. If they're really technical in nature, I'd be happy to take them back and get a response for you.
Thank you. Trustee Amos.
Thank you. I know my community will be, and I am absolutely thrilled that this is coming forward tonight. And you answered one of the questions about whether this was a repeat build, so that's good to know that it's similar to Milton number 10. And wondered, when are the permits going in? And because if we own the land already, we should be able to build as soon as possible, right?
You'll get an updated capital report at the next board meeting, and I'm looking at that now, and it's showing that construction should be starting first thing in the fall. Permits over the course of this spring and in the ground in the fall.
Does it really take that long to get the permits? Will it take like 5 or 6 months?
Through you, Chair Drabens, 5 to 6 months is sometimes optimistic in terms of permits. It's sometimes 7 to 10 months.
I believe I had a recent conversation with the mayor of Oakville, and he is all for having schools first, is in his opinion. So maybe a conversation with him might be a good idea, because he may be able to help us make sure it's the shorter timeline.
Thank you. Vice Chair L. Harrison.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I think I made this comment when the other sketch plans came through previously for some of the other schools, and I wonder why it's not possible to incorporate a room or some space for school councils. And maybe it's just not named explicitly so, but there is space. But I think there's councils or homes in schools in almost every one of our schools that provide a valuable support to students, whether it be in the classroom or through fundraising or through so many other things that they do. It would just be great to have a purpose-built space that acknowledges that contribution to our school communities.
Director Miller?
Through you, Chair Drabens, to Trustee L. Harrison. It is a tremendous idea, but also a tremendous challenge for a board. When we submit application, when we submit our business case for the school, we are required to meet the parameters around square footage of classroom space and gymnasium space, office space for the ministry to approve our funding. So it makes it challenging at times, and an added complication now is daycare spaces as well. It's a good complication, but it is a challenge. So it is a tremendous idea. It does pose problems for us in submitting that to the ministry within the parameters that they provide for us to get that kind of funding, because it in most cases it would add to the footprint of the facility. So I know it's been considered, and in the past has been done in some of our schools, but the funding model was a little different. So, but having said that, we certainly take it under advisement, and if we can figure out a way to do it, why wouldn't we do it? So,
if I can just add to that, one of the attachments to this report is the space template that we have to submit with each project, which Director Miller has outlined, and it's we have to fit into the ministry boxes essentially. And so that's one of the challenges in terms of what type of classroom, what's the purpose, and that sort of thing. I would say that principals are quite creative, though, around trying to work with their school councils on ensuring that they can function well in the building.
You have a follow-up?
I do. So thank you. And I can appreciate that. Certainly all of the funding models seem to be extremely prescriptive and in many cases prohibitive of taking on some of the things that seem to be the right things to do. So I just wonder whether there's an opportunity, whether it be within this process or not, somehow to, the ministry has the Parents Reaching Out grants, which are targeted towards, school councils undertaking work on behalf of us as a board to reach out to other parents, that councils are an acknowledged critical piece of our system. So I just think if there's some way ever to make commentary on that, it would be great, and to acknowledge that worth within things like this.
We can certainly provide that feedback.
I was just going to say, through you, Chair Drabens, to Trustee L. Harrison, we do have opportunities to provide our comments on GSNs and funding and capital priorities and funding for capital projects. The ministry does provide us some opportunities, and we can certainly include those comments in our comments.
Thank you.
Trustee Harvey Hope.
First, I'll comment on that, and then I'll comment my comment. I would think that at a minimum, if one could find at least an extra little cupboard in the staff room. I remember at Limbrook, we always had a really hard time just trying to find enough space to put the stuff for pizza day. And at one school, it's on top of the fridge, and, let's hope all the little baskets don't fall off someday. So again, a cupboard would be number one in the staff room. And the other piece is before and after schools, often they don't have a spot to put even their little rolling cart. So those two pieces alone could probably justify, 10 feet of cupboards 3 feet wide somewhere. So that's piece. The second thing is I love this playground. I really like the fact that the one that's connected to the preschool is open to the kindergarten. So there may be some, joint opportunities to either use the other person's blacktop or get together so you don't have to go all the way around. That's really nice. I have a question about how you get into the gym from the front of the building. I can't really, again, I'm really good at reading these plans, but I'm no architect, but I've been looking at these for a long time. It looks like you have to walk upstairs to get into the gym, if that's the doorway where that front staircase is. And again, if it's close to what, I haven't been to Milton number 10 yet, but if it's like front staircases, it's the problem I'm finding, and I've mentioned this directly to the architects of a couple of the schools that I've been at openings for, is if you're not going to have a stage and you're going to have to use the gym as a spot where you put a temporary stage up, you need 2 doors in and out of the gymnasium to be able to use it with a temporary stage. And they can't be at weird angles in the building. They need to be on, off, stage right, stage left, somewhere. The chair having an entrance off the hall and back into the gym is a good start as a green room. But I'm not too sure how the principal ducks in and out of the gym quickly without going kitty corner all the way up to look like it gets at the preschool. Like James W. Hill has 3 doors, it needs a 4th. I don't know why, they just didn't put it in. There's no lockers on the other side of the wall. And Maple Grove has the same issue. So I keep saying this every single time we see these plans. You got the interior gymnasiums, that's all well and good, but put the doors in a spot where you can actually still have a stage. Thank you.
Just to respond, thanks, Trustee Hardy-Hope, for those comments. I certainly can take those back. It is a point of discussion right now, and as we plan to do the next elementary build, we will be pulling some folks together. And this is one of the issues for conversation, whether we continue to have an internal gym or an outside gym as well, which might help to solve that issue.
Trustee Oliver.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I would actually like to echo and support comments made by Trustee Harvey-Hope around the space for a parent council room and storage. As somebody who served on parent council, who currently still volunteers at the school and is involved with the breakfast program, it's not even a matter of a cupboard. It's a matter of having a dedicated room with storage space that the parent council can use. They often store not just food items for different fundraisers, but also supplies for grade 8 graduations that they hold over from year to year, theme-related things. So storage is certainly needed. Meeting space for this group and other parent committees is required. And then, of course, as Halton Food for Thought expands into our schools, the Breakfast Club also requires space for storage. So I strongly recommend that all of our new school builds are mindful of that and consider allocating considerable meeting space and storage space for such activities. Thank you.
Okay, and seeing no more speakers, we'll move on to the next sketch plan. So we're up to 533 Nelson High School Sketch Plans, Report 18063, on page 52 of your board package. Director Miller would like to say something.
Thank you, Chair Drabens. I'm actually going to turn to Superintendent Blackwell. Before we actually talk about before Associate Director Bogue talks about the sketch plans, I'm going to ask Superintendent Blackwell to talk about the process in communicating these sketch plans out to the communities that are impacted by these renovations and so on. So I'll turn it over to Superintendent Blackwell of the steps that we've done to communicate with the community. Thanks.
Thank you. And through the chair, as we have, as Director Miller has already mentioned, these are sketch plans. These plans have evolved many times since the early stages in the fall. They're a compilation of discussions with school-based staff, with school programs department, with student services department, with administrators, with our facilities department, visiting different sites within our board and outside of our board. And we have the opportunity now to share what we think are a very good idea in moving forward for both the MM Robinson and the Nelson sites. And so when I talk about the process of sharing these sketch plans, I'm going to talk about all 4 schools, Lester B. Pearson, MM Robinson, Nelson, and Bateman, because the processes are the same. So early in March, in the first week of March, we were able to bring a sketch to the steering committee, which included the 4 Burlington trustees. Those plans have been redesigned a little bit since that point, so that's how this process evolves. Prior to March break, we were able to meet with the administrators of all 4 schools and share the plans with them and give them an overview of where we are at this time. School principals had the opportunity to invite school council chairs in to see the plans and have a discussion about what how they would be shared with the school communities. Staff at all 4 schools have seen the plans and had the opportunity to ask some questions and provide some further input and ideas to us. Last evening, we had the opportunity to share the plans at SEAC. Tonight, we're able to share the plans here at the board meeting. Tomorrow evening, MM Robinson, Nelson, and Robert Bateman High Schools will have these plans for viewing at their parent interview evenings. Lester B. Pearson did have them last week out at their school interview meeting, as well as an invitation to come over to MM Robinson tomorrow evening to see the plans and actually bring those communities together. The principals at the schools at MM Robinson and at Robert Bateman are inviting families of where students are in the Community Pathways program to a unique opportunity next week, recognizing that some of them may not be there for the parent interview evenings, and trying to find as many opportunities for families to see the plans. As well, feeder schools will have the opportunity to see the plans. I know that Ward 5, there's a super council meeting that will be upcoming in which the MM Robinson plans and the Nelson sketch plans will be shared, given that both of in Ward 5, the communities will be going to either site. Principals will have copies and large copies of these plans at their schools, and they continue to share them and provide opportunities for their communities to see the plans to date. So that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Associate Director Bogue.
Thanks, Superintendent Blackwell. And I will make just some general comments first, and then we can dig into both of the Nelson sketch plans and the MMR sketch plans. The first thing I want to say is that both of these planning processes have been very, very collaborative processes involving a number of superintendents around the table. Superintendent Blackwell particularly leading this work on the steering committee, but also student services, facilities, secondary program, and superintendents responsible for each of these schools have all been involved. So we debated a little bit who was going to be huddled around the microphone here. I'll make some initial comments, but then I think the questions will go to, that trustees will go to the appropriate superintendents, and we can try to stick handle that, if that makes sense. So first off, from a collaborative effort, we did have school programs, student services, facilities, an architect, of course, involved in the process. The steering committee was involved, and individual staff from both schools. So from that perspective, we think that's a really good start. And as Superintendent Blackwell has commented, there will be opportunities for other folks to have some input as well. If we can start with Nelson, maybe we can start off by just saying that, first off, there have been a number of updates proposed to the building that are going to support all kids within the building. And we know there's been a focus on particular groups, but all kids are going to benefit from a library that's very much central now within the building. The technology areas are being updated significantly. These are going to be state-of-the-art. And there's been some expansion in that area. Food services in the cafeteria is, again, central to the building, and updated will be another significant piece. One of the highlights, we think, of this plan is the CPP, our Community Pathways program, right at the front of the building. The location there, this was where the previous library was built. It's a very unique location with lots of natural light. It's at the front, which means a couple of things. It's easy access to New Street. And we know our community pathway kids often make access the community. They go for walks or trips. They do transit training, those kinds of things. And so that location near to New Street is an important piece. It also provides for some flexible transportation pieces when kids are being dropped off or picked up. There's a little, if you notice on the plan, there's a little bus drop-off location there. So kids would enter through the main buildings typically, as all kids would do, through the main doors, into the building. However, because of the location of the CPP, kids could also enter directly into the CPP if for whatever reason they were not having the best morning or needed a more discreet entry to the building. There's an outdoor learning classroom planned, and it's not on. I don't think it's on your sketch plan, but it's sort of connected to the, it is on one page, thank you. Again, that's located right near the CPP area for a variety of reasons. That makes it very accessible to those kids. It will be fully accessible, so wheelchairs and those kinds of things, but it's also available for all students. So it's a nice addition to this design. There will be a cafe concept connected into the work of the food school and the cafeteria. Again, something that was present in the Robert Bateman school, something that will carry over into this school. And that provides kids opportunities to do hospitality and food services. One of the things that we have heard from the community is that although the building has 2 lifts to get to the second floor, they are lifts. They're not full elevators. So we're in the process of looking at upgrading at least one of those to a full-size elevator so that it, if you've seen some of the lifts in some of our buildings, they are a little bit on the small side. That's all we had in MM Robinson, in fact, when the CP program moved there. And so you can get, a couple of people in the lift, but a full elevator would allow for a little bit more space and or equipment. So we're looking into that right now. One last feature, which I think looks kind of cool, is the busing situation. So we've got mini buses that can come in along the parking lot for drop-off, and there will be mini buses typically with our CPPs. But we've also got a bus lay-by planned to keep big bus traffic out of the parking lot to reduce some of that congestion. And they would line up along Belvinia there. And again, just relieves a little bit of the congestion and is an added feature to this design. So those are kind of the highlights that I see. I'm sure there are others that I've missed, and I'll just look to my superintendent colleagues if there's anything else that they want to speak about or add, or if there are questions, we can certainly direct those to the appropriate staff.
Okay, so we have a few speakers. Trustee Collard.
Thank you. Through you to Associate Director Bogue. Yes, there was considerable conversation last night at SEAC, and I don't want to re-ask all of the same questions that have already been asked and answered there. And I know that the video is on our website if anyone wishes to see that. I wanted to just ask a few questions about traffic. I have a couple of concerns about the lay-by, which would require City of Burlington approval, but also about the bus lane in the parking lot. And I know that the discussion centered around widening the laneway so that there would be room for traffic to move alongside the bus lane. But my experience in these types of situations is that sometimes passenger vehicles don't understand or fully understand that the buses are coming even if they're not there yet, and they may use the bus lane as a quick way of getting their child to school. And so I was wondering if it would be possible to perhaps have a separate drive entrance for the buses and then a different one for passenger vehicles for kiss and ride type of setup. I also noted that they were moving the exit from the parking lot down so that it was immediately opposite of a residential street. And there is a concern that people will exit the school property and then drive down the residential street to exit the community instead of going down Belvinia. And I know from experience again in my own neighborhood that people living on those residential streets quite often do not appreciate the additional traffic. And so I'm just wondering if there's any room there to perhaps change that around a little. And my other questions I've already submitted, and I know that you'll be looking into those, but just regarding the traffic, and I'll go back on the list for my subsequent questions.
I want to just preface any of the responses that we provide tonight by saying we will take this feedback and we'll certainly take it back and have a look at it. But I know Superintendent Blackwell has looked at the busing situation, so we would ask her to respond.
So through the chair to Trustee Collard, one of the things that's not on the diagram in that exit that goes straight across the street, it's a court, so it is not a throughway. When we looked at the site, the city approved the layout as is. We did at one point look at the bus lay-by that's on Belvania in the parking lot as well, but they would only approve one. We did as well, and after listening to some of the questions at SEAC last evening, we looked at the discussion around buses heading north. We know that there will be, right now their projections are 5 large buses. There will be no additional buses, large buses added to Nelson for when the grade 9s come over. They will be able to assume a lot of students within the same routes that are already existing. And also we recognize that there's 2 schools being created, a north and a south campus at school. So that will reduce the busing pieces there. As you head north on Belvania, 2 stop signs. There is a street called Longmore. And Longmore travels to the same areas basically as New Street. It is a city bus route already. So for the 2 times in the day where there may be buses that head north, actually it will be 2 times during the day. It will be along a route either in the east direction or the west, and then it curls back towards New Street. So the busing situation, they'll not see a huge increase in the busing in that community.
And I would just add, I'm not sure whether Superintendent Blackwell referenced the bus lane within the parking lot, but that is not a unique feature to this design, and it does exist in a number of our schools. We do have staff out there in the morning, particularly those will be many of the kids in our CPP program that'll be coming in. So there may be a bit of a training period where we work with the parent community to say that this is not a place to drop off. Obviously, there'll be signage and that kind of thing. So I think it'll be a bit of an adjustment period, but this arrangement does exist in a number of our schools.
Thank you.
Trustee Oliver.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Unfortunately, I was not able to attend CX meeting last night, but I will definitely have a look at the video to hear the discussion, the questions and answers. Looking at this map, I do have a concern about the CPP drop-off area. So I just want to understand how this will logistically work. Is it going to be part of the driveway or the laneway that other parents will be using? Because my concern is, given our experience with the traffic congestion in our school parking lots, and the fact that our CPP students may require a little bit more time to get out of the vehicle, there may be, there will be equipment involved as well. I am concerned for their safety. In an environment that can potentially be very traffic busy. So their safety as well as, preservation of their dignity as well. Saying that we're going to work with our parent community and train them how to, where to drop off, it sounds great, but we know from practice that does not work very well. And even having staff out there directing traffic doesn't always work. So I wonder if we can give some more thought of how we can create a more separate loop specifically for the CPP drop-off to protect those students. Thank you.
Through you, Chair Drabens, to Trustee Oliver. one of our secondary high schools in Oakville has a drop-off at the front entrance for CPP, and that's where the students also come in that are dropped off by their parents and so on. And when the CPP students come in, there are several staff out there to help. Many of those students may require assistance and so on. And so there is, I'm not saying we won't look, you're making a good suggestion. I'm not saying we won't look at it, but I think we need to make sure that at Blakelock and Georgetown, it's very similar. And there's always lots of staff from the CPP out helping helping the students and so on. So there, in those schools, there can't say there's never been, but as far as we're aware, there's never been an issue. Now, that doesn't negate your points. I mean, it is still something that we should look at. But I want to assure people that this is not the first time in our board that this is how this on how we alight from for CPP.
So thank you. I appreciate that, and that's great to hear. But I guess I'm thinking, given that this is an opportunity for building new and making new and purpose built, why not, look at something a little bit different to provide that safer environment? Thank you.
Like I say, it doesn't negate from what you said. It's just I wanted to make sure that the public's aware that we have these experiences. Our support staff and teachers are out there helping those kids all the time. So.
Okay, Trustee Harvey Hope.
Thank you. Through you to Associate Director Bogue. I have a couple comments. I have visited Nelson, but it was one of 7 in a week, so sometimes I'm a little fuzzy. At the very back, there is a pass-through. On this particular plan, it doesn't actually look like there's doors, but I seem to recall going outside and crossing over through that walkway. So it may just be the plan doesn't show the doors that is now going to be below the bridge up above the library. So first floor, very back, there's 2 sets of stairs on either side of this driveway to the courtyard. And one of the things I've noticed is there's a lot of miscellaneous stairs in this school. And I don't think there's enough elevators. And I think that the elevator at the community pathways, it needs to be full size, but you need an elevator at the back somewhere. And you need an elevator over near music somewhere, because music, I recall that's very specifically Nelson they have a lot of it upstairs. And I mean, there's enough stairs just getting in and around the auditorium. Every time you turn around, there's these little ones, and there is an elevator near the auditorium. I presume that may be the one that goes to music. Again, it's sometimes hard on 2D pages. So the music one may be solved. But I think there's an issue with, if you're at the back of the school for the tech courses, there's no elevator unless you go to the front of the school. And that, I mean, people are commenting that they need to be integrated in the school. They're going to be integrated because they're going to be doing their laps just to get back to an elevator. Another comment would be the ComTech has design tech behind it, but no door to get back to a hallway. So if we're already building, maybe we should be creating a corridor so you don't have to go through ComTech to get to design tech. Seems a little strange to me, but maybe that's the way, it may be like, maybe that's the way it's designed. I don't know. Then the same with the staff room that's on the right-hand side. You go through a classroom to get to a staff room. So again, that may be where the elevator needs to be bigger. I don't know, but again, that one seems a little strange. So I agree with Trustee Oliver in that there were some things about Nelson that may have been retrofitted, or gee, we fixed it as we went, and right now might be the, oh well, if we need to take over that and make that bigger or make that elevator the right size, since we are building 1-story additions or a little bit of story addition, and we have a little bit of courtyard maneuverability, like I'm not sure why the food services doesn't go a little bit farther or those kinds of things, so that, you know, a foot or two here and a foot or two there, you might be able to solve some of these other issues. But I like the idea that the library is up. I love the bridge because it does allow you to go through the library to get from the back to the front if you need to. So I always look for alternate exits.
So I think there was a few questions in there earlier on that I'm going to look to Superintendent Blackwell to talk a little bit about where you started your comments, Trustee Harvey Hope. I just want to say as well, and trustees, I think, or maybe it was an email I received around a bit more detail of the inside of each of these new spaces, and we will be getting that's still a bit of a work in progress. So when you comment on the design tech and ComTech area, that is a piece that's being looked at right now as well. We will get those details to you, but I think there was a number of questions and some comments. Maybe Superintendent Blackwell can elaborate.
Sure. Through the chair to Trustee Harvey Hope. We did actually look at filling in that walkway at one point on the first floor, and due to it being a fire route to get out, given that there are exit doors into that courtyard, we can't fill it in. There is still that passageway through, and we know that there's also going to be access to that grassed area inside that exists in the interior of the school at this point. With respect to elevators, as we said, we're going to be looking at that in part of our discussion as we go back. And with respect to the manufacturing area, I think I'll turn it over to Superintendent Hunt-Gibbons.
Thank you, through the chair to Trustee Harvey Hope. With respect to the tech and ComTech areas you mentioned, please be reassured there are doors into the hallway. Maybe they're not showing on the diagram, but there are doors. And once all of the rooms have been laid out, we will provide the greater detail. We have been working with grid and to scale diagrams on all of those, and all of the tech areas are well underway in terms of being laid out. They just don't show on this area. So this is general concept pieces, but how the rooms are laid out, where the doors are, will bring greater detail to you once that is all done. And I would comment just on the comments about the elevator in the music area. There is currently an elevator in Nelson right to the music area. That's where it directly goes right now. By putting the Learning Commons library in the center, what it does is allow that elevator, which currently only goes to one place, it goes to music and nowhere else. It now allows that to be an access point for the second floor right at the front of the school.
So sorry, Trustee Harvey Hope, you actually exhausted all your time. Okay, Trustee Gray.
Thank you very much. I was fortunate enough to be at the SEAC meeting last night to listen to the input and the conversation and the questions and answers. And one of the things that struck me was a feeling of that the CSC program or the CPP program was sort of isolated at the front of the building and what have you. So today I made a purposeful trip over to Georgetown to discuss the movement of students and the positioning of the program over at Georgetown District High School with Principal Paul Dagnon. And I see that it's very similar over there, and he assured me that there's lots of movement of students and that the position of their program is at the front of the building. And I think Director Miller would be able to speak to that. But in fact, it is at one of the major entry points for all students. And so there are lots of students that enter at the same time. And so there is that feeling of school community, involvement, and belonging to the larger school as a whole. So I think that certainly is possibly in this design going to happen as well. I wonder if there could be any comments maybe by Superintendent Blackwell or Associate Director Bogue about the positioning of some of these programs and about the purpose of where some of these programs are located and how it will, in fact, allow these students to feel part of the greater school community.
Thanks, Trustee Gray. I think Superintendent Zonneveld will probably be best to respond. after Director Miller has a few comments.
Thank you, Chair Drabens and Associate Director Bogue. Through Chair Drabens to Trustee Gray, I do have a few comments about that. I was the principal of Georgetown when the plans were drawn up for that, and we had a principals advisory committee, which consisted of staff, community, and a bit of background. Just for elucidation, the students that currently in the Georgetown in the CPP used to go to Milton. They were in EC Drury. There was no program in Georgetown, and it was these kids were on a bus going from Georgetown or Acton, Halton Hills down to Milton every day. So it was one of the impetus to put a program in Georgetown District High School, and so it was put in with the Principals Advisory Committee while I was principal. One of the strong desires was that the students that attend the CPP are like all students in the school and therefore have the right to come in the front entrance, be treated as such, and be included with the rest of the student body coming in. And I think it's the same kind of thinking that we've been thinking about at Nelson, in that a student is, given that many have challenges in their lives, and physically and mentally and emotionally, and we understand the particular challenges of the students in the CPP. But they're Nelson students. They will be Nelson students, and therefore they should be able to go in the front door like all other students, and that should be the area if they so choose, depending on, what Associate Director Bogue had said. And so that was part of the reason. And I think it works very, very well at Georgetown. The Georgetown students who are not in the CPP see the students in the CPP as Georgetown District High School students. That's how they see them. So.
Through the chair, maybe I'll add a few more details. That the intent of having the CPP right out front of the school there is also that it allows for numerous entry points. So you can have students go right in there. If you see in the design, there is a entry built right into that area. That doesn't exist now, but there'd be a direct entry into what's the old library right now. That's one option. But then there are two other entrances along that front area of the school. So depending on where the students will be starting their day, because we'll have, those students have a timetable and a variety of programming that they're participating in as well. So depending on where they start their day, where their locker might be, the various needs of those students and programming options, they could enter into a variety of points. We have parents and staff express the desire for that inclusion that Director Miller is talking about, but also the ability to have a bit of privacy and at times wanting to maintain their dignity by having some of that privacy. And so the choice of entry points we see can support that very well. The one that goes directly into the CPP the students don't have to go through the rest of the school. They can go right into the program area that way. Also, you'll notice if you zoom in a fair bit on the floor plans that show the detailed inside, you'll see the labeling of the classrooms as saying CSC, which is the Community Skills Program. And trustees will remember that within the CPP, we have both the Employability Skills Program and the Community Skills Program. And so the students on the Community Skills Program will spend probably the majority of their time in the CPP area. So you see those classrooms identified that way. But students in the Employability Skills Program, they'll spend some time there, but they'll spend a lot of their time timetabled and programmed for throughout the building. So you don't see ESC labeled classrooms there because they're maybe starting their day in the tech wing, for example, and they may be heading there and have programming there, or they might be in the art room or music or wherever that might be. So they don't have designated classrooms per se in that area. There are other classrooms in that hall, which they might be scheduled into as other students might be, but not classrooms per se. And that's very intentional because we want, as people have mentioned many times tonight, for those students to be well integrated and a part of the whole school population. Also of note, in the CPP area, we talked a lot about having integration going both ways. So you'll see in that CPP wing that there's a health room, and that's for the, I believe it's called the healthcare SHISM. Is that right? That students in regular programming levels would participate in, and we intentionally brought that program into that area because we believe integration goes both ways. So you'll see those students also coming down and using that room as appropriate for their programming. Across the other program areas, we had our student services staff tour with the architect staff to make sure that in each program area, and you can see a number of the areas of the school are being renovated, especially in the tech wing, that throughout those, we brought our expertise there to make sure that those areas are accessible, both in terms of mobility, entry and exit into those rooms, but also even the types of equipment and the furniture that's in those areas to make sure that our students could participate fully in those various tech areas as well. So a lot of focus has gone into ensuring that across all program areas our students can participate. Also in the food school, we know that that's an area that a lot of our there's a lot of benefit to our students in many of our CPP schools, not just at Bateman, but in many of them, and so ensuring that participation happens there as well. Oh, thank you, and my wonderful support over here, Superintendent Blackwell reminded me. Also, you'll notice at the front of the school, also to the left on your diagrams, you'll see an addition there for cosmetology, and we know that many of our CPP students, especially in the ESC side of the program, participate in Cosmo. And so that is located right at the front of the school because those programs rely on a fair bit of foot traffic, students, or not students, the public coming in and benefiting from our students participating in cosmetology. So that's an addition that you see onto the building. Very purpose-built and intentionally located for that purpose as well.
Trustee Reynolds.
Thank you, through the chair. I think the public will welcome knowing that this report has sketch plans, draft plans, if you will, that this is not a done deal. That there's time for them to inform these plans. So I have a couple questions. I think they would like to know the deadline. When do they need to provide this information, this feedback on these plans to our board? By when? I also have a question that was raised, and it was certainly a big issue in discussion at the PAR. So I'd like to understand what consideration was given to including the therapy pool in this design. And finally, I would like to understand, and I'm assuming that other modifications, like the current codes and standards like AODA, those are not all completed. So that the next iteration or the final iteration will show us how compliant we are in terms of the AODA, which is very, is before our board. We have a deadline to make sure that's completed.
Thank you, Trustee Reynolds. Through you, Madam Chair, to trustees, I'll maybe start around some of the timing pieces and then look over to my colleagues over on that part of the room to talk, to respond to some of the other questions. The work, in terms of the plans, you are absolutely right. Nothing is carved in stone, and we would certainly be receptive to suggestions and ideas. I'll let Superintendent Blackwell speak about some of the timing of those pieces. In terms of getting into the construction of this, we are planned to start that work at Nelson in the fall, which, when we start to back things up and look at timing for approvals and those kinds of things means that really we're looking at this spring, I think, in terms of some of the consultation around these if we want to be on schedule. So I think Superintendent Blackwell might be able to flesh that out a little bit more in terms of some of those timing pieces. So I'd look over to her at this point.
Through the chair to Trustee Reynolds, I'm kind of ducking back here. With respect to the timing, many of the opportunities to have fulsome discussions around the purpose-built spaces, it would be really important rather than just looking at the diagrams and providing recommendations, because the spaces, again, are sketches, and understanding how the spaces are used throughout the school is important. When I talked a little bit earlier about the timing of sharing with different pieces of the communities, we're probably looking at the end of April with other opportunities for schools to share as they see fit with different members of the community. We do have parent interview evenings this week. We've got opportunities next week. We've got the Ward 5 Council meeting probably the last week of April, so that gives people a chance to have a fulsome view and discussion around the plans. A reminder that there is an email address set up for all of the PAR implementation. It's PAR implementation@hdsb.ca. So that's also a way of putting forth some ideas.
I'll go ahead and through the chair to trustees, the question about therapy pool. So we spent a lot of time learning and asking questions about this in a few different settings. We've investigated how other boards are approaching this need within their systems, and interestingly, very few provide this kind of facility within their schools for these programs. And actually, we visited a school in Peel, a large center that accommodates, a large number of students of this profile and this programming, and they actually had a therapy pool and took it out. And then as we dug in more with occupational therapists about this, they talked about the kinds of therapeutic supports that students benefit from, and how we can provide those supports, and how we can do that within the regular classroom program, and avoid some of the concerns we have around safety of students and sometimes staff, and there's some of the challenges that come with a therapy pool. So the conversations were around how to, that we can meet those needs really well within the classroom and without the intent of using a therapy pool. So then we also talked about can we provide that opportunity for participating in a, if you want to call it a swim type program still, and the answer certainly is yes, that we can access other community pools within Burlington, as we do within the many other CPP programs also. So balancing off the benefits for students, how we can best meet the needs of students for therapy in a variety of ways, and what it would take in terms of space as well within the facility. That's how we determined that a therapy pool isn't the best way to go at Nelson.
Just clarification then on terms of the other modifications, the Aoda Compliance, knowing that we've sort of achieved all our modifications, meeting our expectations. When would that iteration of the plans come?
Thank you for that question. In terms of Aoda compliance, I mean, we are looking at all of our schools around that. So, our deadline for that really is 2025. But what I can say is that in any schools where we've got students that have specific needs, we deal with those on a as-needed basis. For example, one of the elevators that currently exists in Nelson was put in specifically for an individual student so that they could access that music area, which was not accessible on the second floor. So we certainly would be looking at any of the kids that are moving over, whether they be in CPP or any other students that would be coming to Nelson, to make sure that the building is accessible for those students. And then the rest of the accessibility features would be part of our larger board plan for 2025.
Trustee Collard.
Thank you. I had some questions about the capacity of the building as well as the parking lot. I was wondering if we had the current number of parking spaces and the proposed number of parking spaces, the current capacity and the proposed capacity, as well as the projected enrollment and how students will be accommodated. There's been a lot of discussion in the community that students are going to end up in portables, and I just want to make sure that we're looking into that and ensuring that with the small footprint that we have to work with, that that's not going to be the case.
Thank you for that question. I can maybe start off with the OTG numbers are actually in the report. So they do show that there will be an increase from 1353 to 1494. So we will be physically increasing that number. I haven't got the projected enrollments with me, so I'm looking over to folks who know the school and the numbers a little bit better, maybe to chat about that. And I know Superintendent Blackwell has a better handle on the parking lot as well, which we have heard about, and don't believe that it's going to be an issue based on the traffic going through that parking lot currently. We've even gone out and done some counting of unused spaces. There's certainly lots of capacity there, but I'll turn that over to Superintendent Blackwell, who I think has the best handle on that piece.
So through the chair to Trustee Collard, with respect to parking, we have done some, as part of our planning, spent some time at peak periods of the day at Nelson and looking at the parking lot. There is a large number of spaces available. You'll see that in the design there are additional spaces that have been added on the north side of the building. So parking we're fine with the parking spaces. In terms of actual numbers, I can get you the numbers, okay? But on any given day, there are many spaces available at the school. And then also taking a look at the Robert Bateman parking lot at the same time, just to have an idea in terms of the large number of staff that are there and using that in the consideration of the parking lot design. With respect to the enrollment projections, they are slightly, I think, I'm just trying to find them in the LTAP as we speak. That being said, I think in one or two of the projections in 3 or 4 years, there may be a needed portable, which would it may or may not be needed depending on the enrollment. And looking as well, we know that we have another report coming further tonight that may affect some of the enrollment projections later on. We also know that portable classrooms are in many of our schools, if not most of our high schools, and there's great opportunities for teaching and learning in those portables. At this point, the school is able to look at different timetable options as well, and a variety of, pardon me? Yeah, at this point they're looking at a double lunch, which will also provide more opportunity for use of the classroom spaces.
Thank you. Then one follow-up question regarding the storage for the students that are in CPP. We've heard last night at SEAC that there may be some storage of equipment such as wheelchairs and walkers in the hallway. And I'm wondering if we've had any opportunity to discuss that with the fire marshal to ensure that that would be acceptable to them, because I know in elementary schools you're not even allowed to put a green bin in the hallway. So I'm curious about that.
Through the chair to Trustee Collard. Yeah, as we just discussed at SEAC last night, some equipment, there is a storage area. You'll notice in the right next to that entranceway, that new entranceway I talked about, in the CPP area, there's a storage area indicated there. So some equipment would be stored there. Some equipment, it's most beneficial to have it right in the classroom. So that would be the case with some equipment as well. And then some potentially outside of the classroom because of proximity and the ease of use throughout the course of the day. So those conversations, certainly we can follow up with the fire department because, we certainly don't want to block any, exit from the building.
Thank you. And my final question for this round, when do we expect Nelson to be fully air conditioned?
Again, I'm going to look over to Superintendent Blackwell. I'm not sure whether we expect it to be fully air conditioned, but I know there are specific areas in the school that we have plans for immediately. Superintendent Blackwell.
Through the chair to Trustee Collard, I'm speaking now from a facilities perspective, I guess. The second floor in the plans at this point in the design, the second floor will be air conditioned. Right now, Nelson is not air conditioned at all, except in the office area and I believe the library space. The second floor will be air conditioned, including the CPP area in the first floor. A reminder that we have some great outdoor learning spaces and there's a lot of use outside of the school as well. The food school, the cafeteria, and the Cosmo area as well, where many of the students that are in, as Superintendent Zonnefeld mentioned, in the employability skills certificates courses, those rooms at this point will be air conditioned as well.
Thank you very much.
Director Miller?
Through you, Chair Drabens, I just when you asked the question around wheelchairs and so on in the hallways, that we texted one of our managers who has been in contact with the Burlington Fire Department, and wheelchairs are not considered fire hazard. They're movable objects, so they can be in the hallways.
Thank you. I appreciate getting that answer so quickly.
Trustee Harvey Hope.
Thank you. Through you to the presenter. I guess I'm going to go on a theme of washrooms. So cosmetology doesn't seem to have a public washroom space near it. And if you're going to be having people come in, you have an outside door, but you don't have a bathroom and you don't want them going anywhere near the gym, change room, bathrooms. So maybe it's planned in there as Superintendent Hunt-Gibbons says, sometimes I can't see the door from design tech to the corridor. I don't know. It looks to me like it goes through ComTech. But maybe the bathrooms are in the cosmetology. The other thing is perhaps this might be the opportunity to explain the washroom setup for the community pathways, because it looks like they have a large washroom rather than 2 or 3 small ones. I know that came up in a conversation, and there is one universal washroom as well as the large washroom, and then they would have access, I presume, to the women's and men's at the very end of the corridor. So there is another third set sort of at the end of a walk, I suppose. And my other comment might be that on the next set of sketch plans, maybe the elevators could be easy to find, because the second floor elevator that matches the first floor elevator you can find is not actually labeled. So the music room elevator near the library is not labeled on the second floor plan. Washrooms, Mr. Bogue.
And Superintendent Zonneveld can speak to the washrooms because there is some detail that's not on this drawing as well.
Thanks. Through the chair to Trustee Harvey Hope. So we have been having some discussions with the staff at Bateman and hearing about the needs of those students in terms of the frequency that they would use washrooms and change rooms. And I'll differentiate between the two because in some cases our students need an actual full washroom facility with a sink, toilet, whereas in other cases they need access to a change table where staff would be supporting them in their personal care, and we need a sink in that area and not a toilet. So, the needs are fairly extensive for some of the students. Some students require changing up to 4 times a day, and so they have an actual schedule where they're working through students through those washroom facilities. And so we've decided to add, it's not showing on your designs because, as we've said, these are sketch plans and we continue to update them. So it's in the, sorry, I'll pull it up here. It's in the middle of the, if you look on the plans at the, sorry, on the, in the CPP, the middle classroom you'll see there. There's 3 classrooms in a row in the CPP area. In the middle classroom, we've added another change room that would accommodate a change table and sink to support students in that area as well.
Through Chair Durbence to Trustee Harvey Hope. Remember, these are sketch plans, and part of the purpose of these is this conversation, the other conversations that will happen at the school level. The next set of plans that would become available would be a much more detailed once that process has been completed with all the input. So.
And the reason why I'm harping on this is when we were at, I did Bateman, I've toured Bateman a few times, and other facilities I've been at, we noticed that, it was great that they were going to have state-of-the-art new washroom space, but also that they did need more than, you need to schedule and figure that out. So I'm glad to hear that you're going to have a change room separate from the washroom, so that you'll have 2 opportunities in the same place, but also making sure that some bathroom on the opposite side of the school or on the other floor, again, when we get to the AODA, that, wherever they are, wherever they happen to be, that there'll be facilities that they can use, again, because there aren't as many elevators as maybe one would wish, and having the library on the 2nd floor means they will be, different places in the school. So,
Trustee Reynolds.
Thank you, through the chair, to Associate Director Bogue. So the purpose of the PAR was to improve program delivery for all students. Can you share with us how these facility plans support that goal? What net new programming will be provided to the Nelson students and to the incoming Bateman students that they would not have had before?
Thank you for that. I would ask Superintendent Gibbons to comment.
Thank you, through the chair, to Trustee Reynolds. So what the design does is it purposefully incorporates program from both places, so nothing is being cut out. So Nelson students are not losing any program that they currently have, and Bateman students are not losing any program they currently have. In fact, the offerings for both students are hence enhanced. A couple of the examples would be, if you can see where the tech area is, in that hallway, both the new build and the renovation within allow for all of the tech programming from both places. One of those spots moves an existing fitness area. So because there is currently a fitness center at Nelson that inhabits an old tech shop. So it's being reclaimed as the tech shop, but within a series of, I'm going to say a labyrinth of storage areas at the front of the school. We're able to rebuild the fitness center, and it's actually right by the gymnasium. So they're not losing that part either. It's also teachable space and usable. So the tech offerings are the same. The interior courtyard is also teachable space. And so where you see ComTech and tech design, on the final drawings, you'll see the word used, design tech, because design can be landscape, it can be design thinking, it can be all sorts of design. There's an opportunity to do some landscape design in there as well, and using that courtyard piece and adding on, and the existing greenhouse that is currently attached to a science classroom on the first floor at Nelson. As well, you can see that the food services, which is the hospitality area, has been built into the center and is going to, it's more from what it was at Bateman, and I think it is more a full hospitality now, right? Because our hospitality program is not just feeding or serving a school. It is chef training and serving and all the rest. The restaurant at Bateman that used to be in full operation, people would know it as the Pangea, has been built into the existing space. It's referred to on your diagram as a cafe space, so for serving and all the rest. The full auditorium that is there, drama is being relocated in order that there's still, the drama room is currently at Nelson within that cafeteria space. It's being relocated. So there's not only the full auditorium and stage, which is a full theater, by the way, but there's also then the drama space. So nobody should be feeling that they're giving anything up from a program point of view when they're moving into that school. In fact, they're getting enhancements to both of the offerings. And Superintendent Zonnefeld already touched on the schism around healthcare, which is planned to be incorporated in the CPP area that's right there. And not only is that a technological program of study that's currently offered at Bateman, but it's also one with a great overlap to our science offerings. And we predict that there will be a huge uptake of that program through the science students and the integration of science and technology when that moves over to Nelson High School. So those are just a couple of the highlights. And when diagrams become more specific, I very much look forward to bringing them here and sharing them with the group.
Director Miller.
Through your chair to advance to Trustee Reynolds, although we're talking about Nelson and Bateman at this point, if you'll recall, 3-4 weeks ago, we had a presentation from Pearson and MM Robinson students. Same rationale about providing program, and we heard the Pearson kids say that they were looking forward to getting programs and having fewer online courses than they currently have. About 2 weeks ago, the Pearson and MM staff were in this room together, starting to section and staff MM Robinson for next year, and the two staffs were working together to figure out what courses. And one of the comments, one of the Pearson, and unfortunately I can't remember the course they were talking about, but one of the Pearson teachers said, "This is great. We haven't been able to offer this course for 7 years. And now these students that are at Pearson will now be able to take this particular course." And I wish I could remember. Do you remember what it was, Superintendent Truffin? I think it was an economics course that they have not been able to avail themselves of at Pearson. And so now when they're together, they'll have this opportunity. And the same will apply to the MM and Bateman students, more so for the Bateman students in the academic and applied level programs. They will have more course offerings. But as Superintendent Hunt-Gibbons said, there's enhanced opportunities for Nelson students as well.
Trustee Collard.
Thank you. I'm curious as to where the welding and the paint shops are. I don't see them specified on the plan. It doesn't mean they're not there. I see auto body, but I don't know if that includes the paint shop, and I don't see welding, and so I was just curious.
Thank you. Through the chair to Trustee Collard. Words. So welding is a form of manufacturing, and so if I draw your attention to the addition at the back of the school, we're still moving walls and playing within the inside space, but that will be very much an advanced manufacturing shop. It's going to be very state of the art and focused very much on design thinking. The hope is to
incorporate not only the welding pieces, but the advanced manufacturing, the robotics that's so very important and well off the ground at Bateman and in many of our other schools. And part of that is not just doing the manufacturing part of it, but also being able to do the computer and design pieces of it. And that's why you see it as a pod all that way. So it is very much incorporated within there. And then when you move down into the transportation, auto body is your paint booth piece. So right now, again, we're playing with the size of a paint booth because they're not built to scale. They're standardized sizes. And so then there's choices as to what size goes in there. And then, of course, that depends on how much space you have to move around that as well. So while we're showing 2 walls right now, with the auto body and what's showing, it says on your diagram, coach transportation. And just to clarify there, that had to do with the size of a door that was being put in there, with a coach door is an oversized door, so you can get larger pieces in. But again, we're playing within that space to better configure how we move in and best serve students, not only with the full auto body, but with also transportation as well.
Thank you. That answers my question very well.
Trustee Gray.
Thank you. Through the chair to Director Miller. Just within the last few minutes, you've spoken about the fact that the Pearson staff have been able to come together with the Robinson staff to make some great plans for next year. And I just wondered if you could comment or would comment for us. Do all staff just migrate in the situations that we have with closing a school building, or are there opportunities to move in different directions?
I will refer to Superintendent Blackwell. That question would normally be answered by Executive Officer McFadden, and there's some nuances with it. We may not get the nuances exactly right, but Superintendent Hunt-Gibbons or Superintendent Blackwell both know the basics of the answer. So.
Through the chair to Trustee Gray, great question. One of the things that happens in this situation is they are unique situations, so they are often filled with lots of conversation between the unions, representatives for every employee group in terms of what will happen when the school closes. As we know, Lester B. Pearson and Robinson, for teaching staff, they were put as one school and considered as one school in terms of staffing. There were different agreements based on, there is some collective agreement language in different employee groups, so that dictated some of the things that we did. With Robert Bateman closing, with the program, the IB program, moving to Burlington Central and the composite school being formed at Nelson, it's a little bit more what's the word I'm looking for? That's the one. It is a little bit more specific to the site, and we also know that this is a phased-in amalgamation, in that grade 9 program, pre-IB, and English program essential will be moving September of 2019. So that will have implications in staffing. Long and short of it is that we have had conversations. We've been having ongoing conversations with the Federation, specifically the Teachers Federation at this point, and developing some language to provide to staff around what that looks like moving forward for the next staffing processes. At this time, there's nothing public, but we're very close to coming up with some, they're called letters of agreement, so some language that will help guide the transitions and also provide staff information as to what will be happening as the schools start to close.
Thank you.
Okay, so I guess we'll talk about if anybody has any. Do you have a specific presentation on Robinson, or should we just, if there's any questions on that?
I'd be happy to just highlight a few pieces there if the board would like, and otherwise I think we can move into Q&A there. Would that be? So for MM Robinson, you'll notice and I apologize again. We'll look at the size of the diagrams and the captions and those kinds of things and see if we can get some more clarity for you. But if we just start at the very front of the building, you will see that there is a 3-story, 6-classroom addition. That's pretty clear cut. Those classrooms are not specifically specified for a purpose at this point in time, but they will accommodate more students. Moving to the back, you'll see the CPP program is expanding down that hallway. And remember, the CPP, I think they're in their 4th year now at MM Robinson, and each year another group of students is added to that particular school. And that was happening even prior to the PAR. So those numbers were increasing, and hopefully this will accommodate additional growth in that area. In terms of the food program being beefed up at MM Robinson, you'll see that the cafeteria is sort of being punched out the back for that whole food services piece, and lots of work happening there. And I know there was a concern from around the sort of curb appeal, if you will, and so there is some aesthetics happening at MM as well. That's the dotted lines that you'll see, and so that's happening along the front of the building. And some of the pieces, just in terms of timing, some of the renovations are happening this summer, some of the internal pieces, as well as the cladding around the aesthetics. And then the more significant renovations will happen starting in the fall. So with that, again, questions and answers, we'd farm those out to the appropriate person to provide responses.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions? Trustee Harvey Hope.
Thank you. I am thrilled about the cladding. One of the things that I would like to note that the MM Robinson sign that's in our plan in the picture still will only be, may not be able to be seen from Guelph Line. And one of the things that I've noticed as we drive by schools, and it's particular sometimes in Milton when I drive by and I'm on the wrong street, and Joshua Creek is similar. If you're not on the right spot, you don't know which school it is. And often the sign is on you're coming up into the driveway, but as you drive by on the more major street, you often don't know what the street is. And so I've mentioned this a couple times in that, maybe we could get some smaller versions or kitty corner signs so that you know what they are. Similar to, there is in our coterminous board, there is one that has a sign that is facing the 407. And I'm almost positive that that's not for anybody's view other than people driving by on the 407, because that's parkland. So again, silent marketing or knowing where you are or having people realize which school is in the neighborhood. Just keep that in mind. If there's opportunities to put signs on the 90-degree corners, that would be useful. Maybe.
Thanks, we'll take that back.
Okay, no other speakers at this time. So we will then move on. You can finally vacate that seat there, David. And we're up to 535, Burlington Secondary School Gifted Locations. Report number 18065 on page 61 of your board package. Welcome, Superintendent Zonnefeld.
Thank you. Through the Chair of Trustees, before you have a report regarding information around locations for accommodating students with a gifted profile, choosing a gifted program in secondary in Burlington. And if you recall, this came from during the discussions around the Burlington PAR decisions and a request from trustees that we examine this a bit more carefully and survey parents of students identified as gifted in Burlington around their preferences for accommodation in Burlington. So we engaged in a survey of all parents in Burlington with their student identified as gifted from as early as grade 1 to grade 12. asking all parents to participate. And I can't remember our response rate. It was quite high. We had quite a high number of parents participating, and had quite a range of responses. But what became quite clear were a number of things. One was that parents felt very strongly about proximity, that the location of the school and how far their child had to travel was very important. It was important for them to be able to, stay as close to home as possible. Their ability to participate in extracurricular activities was very important, be a part of the school community, and that proximity was very important to that. Also very important, it became clear in the responses from parents that high quality programming really mattered. In the text comments, we had parents saying, it doesn't really matter where my child attends, just make sure that the programming is of a really high quality. And we had, especially, you'll see there's a number of maps within that report that show where students attended 1 year in grade 8, and then where they attended the next year in grade 9. And so you can see within that where the students live and where they, how many of them then went from choosing to attend the gifted program in grade 8 and in grade 9, and some telling numbers there that, again, proximity really mattered. And so when we asked parents, would a second location be of an appeal to them, the answer was definitely, for sure, as long as we didn't, the result wasn't a lesser program. So we heard that loud and clear. And we know that multiple locations are really appreciated by parents and students. In Oakville, we have 3 locations for the secondary gifted program, and that's really appreciated by those families. And we also know that we're can really train up our teachers to do this program well in a second location. We did that recently in Milton when we began the gifted secondary program there, and it's alive and well in Milton, and has a lot of positive response from students and families there also. We shared this information and decision with ABC Halton a number of weeks ago, and they're quite supportive of a second location in Burlington. We also shared it with SEAC, and it was well received there as well. So you can see other details there in the report, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Trustee Collard.
Thank you. As you know, I was very nervous about doing this without community input, so I thank you very much for getting that input and the feedback, and seeing it on the maps makes a big difference as well. I'm hopeful that when this is implemented in 2020, that we do annual monitoring reports back to the board as to the success of having it in 2 locations, because we have had it in multiple locations in Burlington before, and it was intentionally then placed only at 1 location specifically because there wasn't enough uptake at the other 2 locations. So I want to make sure that we are very careful in the monitoring of this, and I appreciate the work that went into bringing this report to us.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Zonnefeld. There are no more speakers. Okay, here we are at 7 to 10. So are there any notices of motion at all? Seeing none. Next is the director's report.
Thank you, Chair Drevents. I have nothing to report for public this evening. I already did it with the Superintendent of Facilities.
Excellent. So now we are on to communications from the chair, and I just wanted to mention that the Halton Skills Competition was last week, and it had an incredible turnout. I was able to get into every single classroom. And Vice Chair Al Harrison and Trustee Amos were also up there. We were all judging different competitions. It was fantastic seeing kids so engaged in all the different wide variety of activities, it was just a pleasure. And I'm sure I speak on behalf of the two other trustees that were there that should we be there? Should we be in office next year? Please invite us back. Okay. And that's all I have. So do we have any committee reports? Trustee Collard.
Thank you. SEAC met last night, and we primarily spoke about the renovations at Nelson and MM Robinson, but we also did some work. We had a bit of a workshop where we talked about the first 4 recommendations from the Spec Ed review, and it was a very productive meeting.
Trustee Reynolds.
Thank you. I have a question actually on behalf of the fundraising committee. This would be the appropriate time to raise it for the director. Just wondering what the status of our, we were having a review of our draft fundraising policy. That was back in February for legal consultation, and I'm just wondering when we could expect that back.
Through you, Chair Drabens, to Trustee Reynolds, it's part of a bigger review of all policies. And what? Well, I can get back to you with when we'll get that back. We have had some of the information come back to us, and the chair and myself have been provided with that. So,
Vice Chair Al Harrison.
Thanks very much. Through you, Madam Chair, I just wanted to report that committee of the whole met last Wednesday, and we had a really, I think, great and very much a learning session around the traditional land acknowledgement. And I just wanted to thank Steve Paquette, Tammy Hardwick, and Superintendent Etoff for being there and sharing all of their knowledge with us. Wanted to thank Superintendent Hunt Gibbons and her colleague for talking to us about the LEAP program and all of the great stuff that is happening with that program. And we also started the conversation around budget. So looking forward, our next meeting is next week, and I just wanted to put a call out to committee chairs for any agenda items right now. And so far we have something, trustee communications item, and a finance and accountability item around trustee expenses. So I look for a little bit more definition on that one, and just if there's any other items, please let me know in the next day or so. Thanks very much.
Trustee Oliver.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Last week, the Special Education Review Committee met and wrapped up, in essence, phase 2 of the review. As a result, we have some really solid recommendations that were presented to SEAC for consideration. I believe they will help to streamline our identification and placement process and improve communication with families, which will, altogether lead to much better outcomes for our students with special needs. Also last week, further to that, there is some consideration being given to a potential phase 3 of the review to look at a substantial group of our students with special education needs who have individualized education plans, but who are fall into the category of non-identified. So that's a group of interest because it is such a large proportion of our students. And I personally would, recommend that we have a look at that group of students. So that's something to consider. Also last week, and Superintendent Zoneville, please chime in if I'm missing anything. Also last week, the Mental Health Steering Committee met. We looked at finalizing the action plan for 2017-18, looking at progress indicators and the status of where things are at, the implementation of the action plan itself. There's some terrific work being done by the mental health department with our students and our staff in all of our schools, and I'm quite pleased to be part of that steering committee. At our next meeting, we'll be looking at drafting a mental health strategy for 2017-2020. So I look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you. We're back to Vice Chair Al Harrison.
My apologies. I have to fix a little goof that I did a couple seconds ago. And I just wanted to recognize Megan Merwart for also presenting at Committee of the Whole last week around LEAP. And I understand that perhaps Lisa Brock, her colleague, also had some input into the presentation. So I just wanted to properly recognize their efforts. Thanks.
Okay. Now we're on to trustee questions and comments. Okay, we have a technical weird thing happening. Well, I guess we'll go with Trustee Harvey Hope.
Yeah, not sure how. Anyway, we'll go with it. So it's robotics championships time. So just for those of you so inclined, if you're so inclined, there's robotics every weekend. The Oakville Trafalgar team came in 5th at Waterloo. There is a community-wide team in Oakville that does have Halton District School students in it. It's not a Halton District School team, but it's spreading they won the chairman's at York, which is a prestigious award. And they're cheering on all the other teams, both our coterminous boards, the private school boards. Anyway, they're still doing their social media thing. So I get blasted every weekend with robotics wonderful news. And I know Chair Grubent is also cheering on her teams. And we have a whole slew of our Halton teams going to McMaster this weekend. 10. Okay, we're up to 10. Holy cow. Anyway, well, that OT also has 2 teams, so that we're creeping up there. I unfortunately can't attend this year. I have other commitments, but it's always fun to go to those championships because it's like going to a rock concert, so I highly recommend it. And it's really good to know that the future of our senior devices and all the robotic things we're going to need is in good hands. Thanks.
Trustee Reynolds.
Thank you. I'm hearing really great things about the on-the-go mobile app that's being used in a pilot of some of our schools. And I was just wondering if the director could clarify when you could see it being rolled out to all the schools.
I'll refer to Superintendent Etoff.
Yes, on behalf of Superintendent Trufin and myself, he was just reminding me that he's helping to pay for it this year. So, with a little help from my department, it's actually going to be released to all schools in Education Week at the beginning of May. So we have shared it with the with our school administrators at our last family of schools. Both individuals in Gord's department as well as mine are currently reaching out and working with all the schools who are not currently involved with the app and weren't part of that pilot school in terms of ensuring that the proper RSS feeds are working properly and everything's in place so that we can do a full implementation and rollout for Education Week, which is in the first week in May. And then, of course, we know we won't catch all families at that time, so we'll kind of do a repeated full launch in the fall as well.
There are no more speakers on the list. Can I get a motion to adjourn? Oh, actually, it was Trustee Amos, and then it was Trustee Daniele. I'm really sorry, Trustee Gray. I know you're down on your game because you've been away for a month. Anyways, so. All those in favor? I don't think Trustee Pappin's still with us, is she? No, Kevin's saying no. So that passes unanimously within the room. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of the week.